You're unbelievable. You're unbelievable. You're unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable that a man could do so much for the cause of cancer. To run with just one good leg and a prosthetic leg on the other to raise money for this disease, it was unbelievable. But it's one of those unbelievable but true stories. Terry Fox is a real person. We have Terry Fox Boulevard over here. And so we know what he did, and it was absolutely unbelievable. And he's another example that sometimes in life, the unbelievable is actually true. Sometimes it actually happens. The Columbus Blue Jackets sweeping the Tampa Bay Lightning in 4 straight. Unbelievable, but true. You know, our astronaut walking in outer space tied with that that tube that connects him to the spaceship. That's unbelievable, but it's true as well. And then those tightrope walkers that walk across the Niagara Gorge on that little wire and do it safely, it is absolutely unbelievable, but true. Sometimes the unbelievable is true. And that's what this series that we're in the middle of today is all about. We're looking at 3 unbelievable events that took place on that first Easter that turned out to be unbelievable, but true. And we're going to see how they're also true in our lives today. Last week we looked at the first one, and that was, of course, Jesus rising from the dead. Unbelievable. A dead man in the grave for 3 months rises again as he said he would. Unbelievable. And he was seen by over 500 people. And it's just another one of the unbelievable events. And then, of course, what we're going to look about today is an unbelievable event about the moving of an immovable stone. An immovable stone. This one should catch our attention. Because without trying to sound too pessimistic, I think you would agree with me that life is tough. There is strewn across the path of every single one of us some immovable stones, some obstacles that keep us from getting where we want to go in life, keep us from going where God wants us to go in life. There is no such thing as a yellow brick road in this world, only in the world of Oz. You don't have a free path in this world. There are obstacles. Not even Jesus promises that if we follow him, that we're going to have a life of ease, a clear path. In fact, he promises just the opposite. Listen to what he said. He said, in this world, you will have trouble. Aren't you glad you came to church this morning? That's an encouraging verse, isn't it? But you know, it's true. And when Jesus spoke that for the first time, I think the whole world groaned. Because we all know it's true, don't we? I mean, it really is true for all of us. Every single one of us, several times throughout our life, has Murphy's Law applied to us. Isn't that right? Murphy's Law. If anything can go wrong, it will. And I add at the most inopportune time. Isn't that the truth? I mean, have you noticed, that it is on the coldest days of the winter that OC Transpo is the latest? Have you noticed that it's when you don't have any time to spare that your car breaks down? That's when it goes. And this one in particular, have you noticed, as I've noticed in our house, that our appliances always break down on the weekend when to call somebody is double the price? Always happens on the weekend. And we also find sometimes that, we sleep in on the mornings that we least can be late for work. Or what about this one? On those days that you're already running a little late and you're desperate to get there as fast as you can, isn't it true that those are the days you get every red light on the street. Isn't that true? It just seems like in everybody's life there are those obstacles. Nobody escapes it. They're on all of our path, things that make us difficult to get where we want to go, where we believe God wants us to go. The truth is, success doesn't come easy in life. There are always some obstacles. There are always some stones in our path that prevent us from getting there. And I've discovered that, in my life, that those stones that get in the way, they seem to get in the way of everybody when they're trying to get something important in their life. And it seems many times it's the same stone that keeps standing in their path and they can't get past it. It seems immovable. For the Toronto Maple Leafs, that immovable stone is those rotten Boston Bruins that they just always get in our path. But I've discovered this, and see if you wouldn't agree, that the bigger the dream and the bigger the desire, the bigger the stone in front of us. The bigger the dream, the bigger the desire, the more you want it, the bigger the stone seems to be that blocks your path. And the truth is, we all have big dreams and we all have these big stones in our path. Every single one of us. So what's yours? What's your immovable stone? I mean, they're all different. For some, it could be a loveless marriage. For others, it could be a dead-end job. For some of you, it may be debt that you can't seem to get past or you can't get rid of. Maybe it's failures from your past that are hanging with you. Maybe it's bitterness over something that you can't seem to let go of. Maybe it's the death of a spouse or a child or a sibling that you just can't seem to move on. If you're a student this morning, maybe it's math, maybe it's history, maybe it's science. Maybe for all of us, it could be some physical impairment. Maybe it could be, a scar from a broken dream, a broken heart, a broken plan, a broken relationship. You see, stones come in all sizes, shapes, and materials. They're not all the same. They're different with all of us. They come in all sizes and shapes, and yet all of them have one thing in common, and that one thing in common is they all say the same thing to us. They say, immovable, impossible, you can't pass. That's what the stones in our life say to us. It's interesting that the ladies who wanted to embalm the body of Jesus on that first Easter Sunday morning, they ran into one of these immovable, impossible, you can't pass stones. As I said, they wanted to embalm the body of Jesus. They started Friday night after his death, but it ran into Friday evening, and of course, at sunset, the Sabbath begins, and you can't do any work, so they had to stop. So Sunday morning, they wanted to go back and finish the job that they had started, but there was an obstacle in their path. Let me read you Mark's account of this. Mark's the second book in the New Testament. It's written by a man by the name of Mark, who was a contemporary of those in Jesus' life, and he was a good friend of Peter, and Peter shared a lot of this information with Mark. And here's what he writes. Saturday evening, when the Sabbath ended, Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome went out and purchased burial spices so they could anoint Jesus' body. Very early on Sunday morning, just at sunrise, they went to the tomb. On the way, they were asking each other, who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb? It's interesting. Here they are. They're moving towards the tomb, and they're wanting to get in there and finish the job of embalming the body of Jesus. They still believe he's dead because, no dead men don't come back to life again. They thought he was the Messiah. Now he's just a good friend. They loved him. They wanted to embalm him, and so they're wanting to get back there, but there's this huge stone standing between them and Jesus. And it's a literal stone. It wasn't the stone of having to touch a dead body. Some people can't do that, but they'd already done that. It wasn't the fear of what the smell would be like because the body had been dead for 3 days. It was more practical than that. It was literally the stone that had been rolled in front of Jesus' tomb. This is a typical tomb back in those days, and this is a typical stone, and you can see the entrance, and it would roll down and close there. And they had watched there on Friday when that stone had rolled shut. And they knew how big that stone was. They knew roughly how heavy it was. We don't, because that's not what we do anymore. But these stones were so big, it could be 2 tons. It was a huge stone. And they put it in a little track in the stone along the bottom here, much like you would put your sliding door in your kitchen or your family room, and so that they could roll the stone in that track and get it to close. And that track was always on a slight angle towards the closed position. You can see they put a wedge here to keep this stone in place. Once you move the wedge, the stone will roll by itself and shut. And they did it to make it easier to close, but they also did it so it'd be harder to open. In other words, you don't want that stone rolling back open and exposing the body. And so they put it on an angle down so that when it was shut and it would stay shut. So here were these women. Women, mind you, who are going to go and embalm the body of Jesus, and they realize they've got to move a stone like this that weighs 2 tons. 2 tons. And they've got to not only move it, but they've got to roll it, no pun intended, from a dead stop. I mean, it was closed. They had to get behind it and move it uphill. And to make it even worse, remember the religious leaders had the governor seal the stone shut, so there's a seal on it, and there's guards out in front making sure nobody will get inside. I'm telling you, these ladies were on a fool's errand. There's no way they could get in. They had about as much chance getting into the tomb of Jesus as they would have getting into the most secure safe in the world today. Just couldn't be done. It was unbelievable to think that they would even get inside. There is no way that they could get inside. It was too heavy. It was glued shut. It had guards. There's just no way they were going to get in it. And the interesting thing is they knew it. They knew it. They weren't stupid. They knew that humanly speaking, it was impossible. But the thing that amazes me about these women is that even though they knew this, they kept walking towards the tomb. They didn't gather together in one of the Mary's kitchens and, pour some coffee and sit there and complain about their situation. That they weren't going, how are we ever going to do this? We didn't get finished on Friday. Now they put the stone in. The stone's sealed. We can't do that. We're women, even the man can barely do it. How could we ever do that? We'll never get in there. It's not fair. Why isn't there somebody who could help us? I mean, the disciples, they're a bunch of chickens. They're in hiding. They're not going to help us. And the Romans won't help us, and the religious leaders, they definitely won't help us. We're never going to get in there. As much as we want to do this, we might as well just sit here because we just can't do it. Not a chance. That wasn't what these women did. Not these. Listen to what they did. It says right here, on the way, they were asking each other, who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb? These women were women of action. They weren't hand wringers, They weren't into pity parties. They weren't going back there and talking about quit. There was no quit in them, just like in the Ottawa 67s. There's no quit there. There's no quit there either. They weren't going to quit. They were walking towards the tomb, and they're talking to each other. How are we going to do this? Not, we can't do this. How are we going to do this? How are we going to roll it? How are we going to move away? Come on, ladies, we've got to figure a way. Mary, do you have any ideas? We've got to have somebody's got to have a plan. Somebody's got to have an idea. We got to move this. We're getting in there one way or another. We're getting in. We got to think of something. God, you got to help us. I don't know how you're going to do it, God, but you got to help us roll that. And they're talking as they go along, not about the pity party that we can't move it, but how we will move it. They're talking all along, and then all of a sudden they come around the corner to where the tomb is, and they look at it and they can't believe what they see because the stone is already rolled away. They say that 90% of what we worry about never happens. 100% of what they were worried about didn't happen. Well, listen to what Mark says here. But as they arrived, they looked up and saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled aside. When they entered the tomb, they saw a young man, an angel, clothed in white robes, sitting on the right side. The women were shocked, but the angel said, "Don't be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He isn't here. He is," there's the word, "risen from the dead. Look, this is where they laid his body," and they showed him. "Now go and tell his disciples, including Peter, that Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there just as he told you before he died." I would have given anything to have been in that garden when those women came around the corner and saw the tomb. Wouldn't you? I mean, it'd be so interesting to watch. They come around the corner, and all of a sudden, almost in unison, their jaws probably dropped open. And I'm sure in unison they thought, if they didn't say it, they said, "Who rolled the stone away? Who did it? How did that happen? It's open. Who rolled the stone?" I know the disciples didn't do it. The Romans didn't do it. The religious leaders. Who rolled the stone away? Well, Matthew tells us in the first book of the New Testament, he said it was an angel of the Lord came down from heaven and rolled the stone away. But do you know why the angel came down and rolled the stone away? It's not why you think. It's not why most people think. You see, the stone wasn't moved to let Jesus out. That's what most people think. The angel rolled the stone out and then Jesus marched out. That's not the way it happened. See, later on, we discover that his resurrected body isn't affected by walls or doors or stones, because all of a sudden he showed up in the room where the disciples were. He just appeared. He came right through the walls. So they didn't roll the stone away to let Jesus out. I got a hunch. He was already out. He was already gone. The tomb was empty when the angel rolled it away. Why the angel rolled it away was to let the women in. Not to let Jesus out, to let the women in so that they could see that indeed the tomb was empty. And I can't prove what I'm about to tell you right now. Nowhere in Scripture does it say this. And I think the reason it doesn't say it anywhere is because nobody was there when it happened. But I believe with all my heart, and I'll tell you in a moment why, I believe with all my heart that the angel moved the stone as the women were on their way to the tomb. I don't think it happened before they left home. I think it was while they were moving towards the tomb that the stone was rolled away. And I'll tell you why. Because that would be consistent with the way Jesus has worked from the very beginning of time right up to the present time. Let me give you another example. During Jesus' earthly ministry, there were 10 lepers that came to Jesus. And they wanted to be healed. Now, leprosy was such an offensive disease and contagious disease that they didn't walk right up to Jesus face to face and say, "Jesus, will you heal us?" They weren't allowed to do that. They had to stay at a distance. So they were probably out there just outside our front doors. And they could see Jesus, and they yelled to Jesus, "Jesus, we have leprosy. Will you please heal us?" And Jesus looked back at them, and I probably cupped his hand around his mouth, and he yelled out, "Yeah, go and show yourself to the priest is healed." And I can only imagine, it doesn't say, but I can only imagine what the 10 that were lepers did next. I'm sure they looked at each other and said, "What did he say? Did he say go and show ourselves? We're not healed." You know, if they looked down at their hands and looked at each other, and I'm sure they did, they would have quickly seen, we're not healed. Did he say go and show ourselves as healed? That's crazy. That will make ourselves a fool. They'll kick us out. You see, if you had leprosy, you weren't allowed around people. And if you beat the disease, if you got healthy somehow, you had to go to the priest, and he would examine you. And if indeed you were healed, he'd let everybody know, and they could then go out into society. So Jesus said, go and show yourself as healed. But they weren't healed. But for some reason, they decided that they would go anyways. And it's a good thing that they did, because listen to the rest of the story. It was as they went. As they went, they were cleansed. Not when they first turned, but when they, in the process of going to show the religious leaders that they were healed, they were healed. You see, it's a biblical principle that God responds to our faith. When we demonstrate faith, He responds. In fact, it says to us in Hebrews that without faith, it's impossible to please God. You've got to have faith in order for God to be pleased, and God only responds to our faith. And that's why I'm absolutely convinced that it was as the women went to the tomb that God rolled the stone away. And this brings us to an important principle from Scripture that I want you to remember today. Because this principle applies to every area of your life and my life. It doesn't matter what area it is. It applies to it all. Here's what it is. God only moves the stones that we move towards. God only moves the stones that we, by faith, begin to move towards. You see, God says, if you will draw near to me, I'll draw near to you. You need to begin work. You need to demonstrate faith. If you'll demonstrate faith, I'll honor that faith. And that principle makes me wonder this. It makes me wonder what would happen if we did the same thing. What would happen if instead of feeling sorry for ourselves, having a pity party, what if instead of giving up and thinking to ourselves, I might as well give up. I've come across this stone, this obstacle again and again. I can't get past it. I don't know how to get past it. I prayed. I don't know what to do. It doesn't move. I might as well just give up and stay here. It's never going to change. What if instead of doing that, we did what the women did on that first Easter Sunday? What if we started walking towards our impossible, immovable stone, saying, okay, Lord, I don't know how you're going to do this, but I'm trusting you to either move the stone or break the stone, whatever it is. God, I'm walking by faith, and I'm going to keep walking towards it, trusting you and believing in you, and it will one day move. What if we did that? Would it be true that if we did that God would also roll our stone away? What do you think? Some of you know I've told part of the story before. About 4 years ago, Judy and I decided it was time for us to move from a 2-story, 4-bedroom house down to a bungalow. We were now empty nesters, and Judy's had both knees replaced, and we're not getting any younger, and we figured being on one floor where no stairs, that would be the ideal place to live, and we'd be getting ready for retirement. And so we thought, okay, now's the time to do it. This 4 years ago. We're gonna make this move, and we made one commitment, and that is we would not take on one more dollar of mortgage payments, because at that stage in our life, you don't want more mortgage payments. But we thought that's not going to be a problem. That's going to be a breeze. I mean, we're selling a 2-story with 4 bedrooms. We're going down to 2 or 3 bedrooms on a bungalow. I mean, we should have money to spare. This is going to be a piece of cake. Boy, were we wrong. At least I was wrong. I'm telling you, every baby boomer in the place is moving out of their houses and into bungalows or condos, and is jacking up the prices so high. I couldn't believe it. We notified our agent and said, we want to move into a bungalow. Will you start looking for us? And I went on to realtor.ca, where you can see all the houses that are for sale, I guess anywhere in Canada, and looked. And I started looking every day. I spent 30 or 40 minutes every day just looking through all the ads. And we were looking far. I mean, we were looking Carlton Place and Carp and, all the way out in the country, because I thought, well, we can live in the country. It'd be nice. Judy didn't like that, but I thought we could live out there. And it'd be cheaper. I could tell them the money we'd save by doing that, and we'd doing all that. And the houses were more expensive than our own house. And I'm thinking, what's going on with this? There's something wrong. And I kept looking. 2 years went by and still hadn't been able to find a house. 3 years went by, no house. I think we found 3 that would be good. And I think we put offers in on 2 of them. And of course, we put the offers in, and they were lowball, because we're trying to get them into our price range, which I thought was the right price range. I thought they were overcharging for their house. And I prayed, Lord, would you move this stone? We've got to get into a smaller house. And they were all rejected, every single one of them. I mean, that financial stone that was standing between us and a bungalow, which would seem to be the healthy way to live, the best way to live, downs, all that kind of stuff, standing between, and we couldn't get past it. And I'm trying to figure out to myself, well, what's going on? I've been praying about this. Lord, I've been walking by faith. I'm looking every day. I'm not just waiting for you to drop it in my life. Where is it? And God, I prayed about some of these. We really prayed. A couple of them were on the water, and that's where I'd really like to be. And I prayed, Lord, this is it. Move this stone, get us in there, cause them, give me favor with them. Let them sell it to me cheaper than they're asking. I'm praying all these prayers. Nobody was selling me cheaper than they were asking. Everybody was selling more than they were asking. And so this went on for 3 years and nothing. And we got kind of discouraged, and I'm thinking to myself, is this ever going to happen? Is this stone never going to move? And I'll be honest, my faith started going down a little bit. Instead of checking, by the 3rd year, instead of checking realtor.ca every day, I was checking every other day. And then I was checking once or twice a week. But I was still walking towards the stone. I had a little bit of faith. I was still walking towards the stone, but I'm getting discouraged about this. Well, God, are you ever going to move that stone? Why won't you move that stone? Why? This house is in a good spot. Why? It doesn't make any sense. And then one day, suddenly, remember Pastor Scott's message a couple weeks ago? One day, I'm thumbing through the screen on realtor.ca, and there it is. I mean, it shocked me at first. I looked, I thought, Ooh, that's a nice house. I wonder what that's like. Found out it's in Stittsville. It's not very far away, close to the church. Found out it's got trees behind it, not a house. That's almost like being in the country. I mean, I can look out the back and I think I'm in the country. It's unbelievable. And then I looked at the price. When I saw the price, I thought, I can't believe that. What's wrong with it? Is there something wrong with that house? It's in our price range. It's the only one I've seen in our price range in 3 years. What's going on? I didn't wait to ask. I called our agent and said, hey, I found this house. Here it is. See if it's the right one. I think it's the right one for us. She calls back and says, yeah, it's the right one for you, except it's sold. Conditionally sold, but it's sold. Take your knife and right through the heart. I mean, I thought that stone had started to move. It was an illusion. It came right back on my fingers. Slam shut. I thought, oh, no, that can't be. One house in 3 years, Lord, what are you doing? I mean, come on. But I kept looking at it. The next day, I looked at it again. Hey, it doesn't say sold on it. I kept looking at it. It doesn't say sold. I wonder what's going on. And then I talked to another agent here in the church just one Sunday. I told him we tried to get this house and couldn't get it. He says, I just heard that deal fell through, that the finances didn't work out and fell through. I said, you're kidding. He said, no, that's what I heard. So I called my agent up and said, hey, I heard it just fell through. Check it out. She calls me back and says it did fall through. And so we went and saw the house and we bought the house. Jesus still moves stones that we move towards. He really does. I'm living proof. You can come and see the proof of a stone that he moved. It was an immovable stone. 3 years, wouldn't move. And then all of a sudden, he moved the stone. Now, don't assume by what I'm saying that every time you move towards a stone, that God's going to roll it away. Because sometimes God knows that that's not really the stone that needs to be rolled away. And for you, that stone shouldn't get rolled away. Remember, it took me 3 years, and we put 2 offers in. There was one house that Judy and I both loved and wanted that house. It was on the Mississippi River. Maybe God was protecting us. But we loved that house, and we prayed. And I prayed, Lord, please help us get this house. You're going to have to do a miracle here. You're going to have to grant us favor. And we didn't get it, and we were discouraged. God didn't move that stone because that wasn't the stone that needed to be moved. And you want to know something I found later? God protected us. If we had bought that stone, it would have cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars after we bought it. I didn't know that. I couldn't see that, but God did. He didn't move. You see, sometimes the stones are not the right time to move. And sometimes the best thing for us is not to have the stone move. Sometimes we need to go over a stone, around the stone, underneath the stone, or through the stone. That's what we need. And if that's what we need, if we will keep walking by faith towards the stone, God will help us do that. He'll either take us over it, around it, until we get to the real stone and have the right one moved. I'm telling you, when we had that financial stone moved for us for the house we're in now, it was the right stone. And it was the right house for us. And God knew it, and God moved the stone. You see, if we're going to have God move stones in our lives, then we are going to have to, trust Him and move towards Him. We're going to have to take on the spirit of the women on that first Easter Sunday and the spirit of Robert Schuller. Now, you know the spirit of the women on the way to the tomb. I've already told you. They were walking, trusting the Lord, even though they didn't know how. Now, Robert Schuller is something different. Some of you remember him from the Crystal Cathedral. Some of you loved Robert Schuller. Some of you didn't love him so much. But whether you loved him or not, everybody's right some of the time. And when he made this statement I'm going to share with you, he was 100% right. Here's what he said. When faced with a mountain, I will not quit. I will keep on striving until I climb over, find a pass through, tunnel underneath, or simply stay and turn the mountain into a gold mine with God's help. I think that the women walking to the tomb that morning were saying something like that. I think they were saying to each other, come on, ladies, we're going to move this stone. I know it's 2 tons. I know it's sealed. I know all that stuff. I know there are guards, but we're going to move it somehow. God's going to help us one way or another. God's going to help us. Come on, if guys can move it, we can do it. We can do anything guys can do and better. We're going to move that stone. We're going to find a way over it, around it, under it, through it, but we are going to be in that tomb and do what we need to do. We're not going to allow this stone in our path to be our obstacle path. We're going to walk through it. We're trusting God to move the stone for us somehow. And he did. And he did. And you know, I know that you have some stones in your path this morning too. So do I. We all do. Nobody walks down a yellow brick road. Sometimes we look at people and we think, wow, I'd love to live their life. They're on that easy path. They don't have the struggles that we have, the problems that we have. They're on that yellow brick road. They're not on a yellow brick road, let me tell you. Nobody is. Everybody has stones in their path. Some of them are big, some of them are small. Some of them are immovable, impassable. All of them are yelling at you, you can't get past, it's impossible. Some of those stones can trip you up, and some of them feel like they're trapping you as well. Some of those stones, it seems like it's been sealed by the enemy, and there's no way you're getting past. Others of the stones in your path seem to have guards placed in front of them, just taunting you. Go ahead, try to get through. You'll never get through. We all have them, every single one of us in this room this morning. And when you come up against those kind of stones, those immovable stones, you can get discouraged and defeated and just slunk down into your easy chair, turn on Netflix and try to numb the pain, the disappointment, the discouragement, even your anger at God for not moving the stone. Or you can do what the ladies did. And by faith, you can start moving towards the stone. Which you do will determine who wins, the stone or you. And I have discovered from the Easter story that no matter how impossible the stone, no matter how big, how many tons it is, no matter how immovable and how long it's been there, I've discovered that stones are not a problem for Jesus. Never have been, never will be. They're not a problem for him. Jesus still moves stones that we in faith move towards. Sometimes it takes time. It took 4 years before we got into our house. 4 years. Sometimes it takes time. But I'll tell you this, God doesn't move anything that you aren't willing to demonstrate faith for. We have to be willing to walk towards it in faith, believing in God, in order for him to help us move those stones. We need to have courage and we need to have boldness to be like those women on the road to the tomb. We really do. We just can't have the attitude, well, someday I need to do that. Or I hope someday I'll do that. See, this is one of those things in life where it demands deliberate, immediate, decisive action. We've all got stones in our path. I don't know what your stone is this morning. It might be, a financial stone that you don't think you'll ever get past. Maybe it's a health stone. Maybe you're struggling health-wise and you think you can't get past it. Maybe it's a career. Maybe it's in school. Maybe it's in your marriage. Maybe it's with your kids. I don't know where it is. We all, as I said, they come in all sizes and shapes and colors. And they all tell us the same thing. You can't get past. You can't get past. While we all have them this morning, it would be a shame, it would be a tragedy for us this morning, any of us, even one of us, to get up from this service and to walk out into the sunshine and say, I really should walk towards that. I really should follow the example of the ladies, and I'm going to. One day I'm going to do that. That would be a tragedy, because God will never move a stone from your life when you act faith like that.